This video is sponsored by ExpressVPN. Recently, talk show host John Oliver used a surprisingly simple set of steps to track and record the online search history and internet activity of several members of Congress. And oh boy, those Congress members should have used ExpressVPN. And look, let's be real here. You clicked on this video. You like anime. You also have a search history. A search history you probably wouldn't want people to see. Isn't that right, Jennifer? To avoid this, I use ExpressVPN because of how they reroute my connection through their encrypted servers, protecting my browsing activity from anyone who might be watching, including my internet service provider who can sell my data to third parties. But there's also non-shame-based reasons to use ExpressVPN, like switching your IP address with just a few clicks, so you can access entire worlds of new content on the streaming services you're already paying for. You are likely being screwed in terms of anime selection, like if you live in the US, the entire Studio Ghibli library is waiting for you on UK Netflix. Find out how you can get 3 months of ExpressVPN for free by visiting expressvpn.com/eyepatchwolf or clicking the link in the description below. Hello, welcome to the current state of Shonen Jump 2022, the video series where I spend a significant portion of my time and life energy dissecting and analyzing what is essentially a magazine made for children. I do this for 2 reasons. One, understanding this magazine right now is a window into what anime and manga will be in the future. Did you want to know that Dr. Stone, Promised Neverland, or Spy X Family were going to be big? Well, you could have just watched my video from 5 years ago. I mean, I didn't see Demon Slayer coming, but I mean, a manga about swords? How's that gonna work? The second, and honestly more important reason, is that these videos are my way of exposing newer, lesser known titles to a potentially wider global audience, and in doing so, ever so slightly increasing their chance of success. So for example, 2 years ago, I talked about the early days of Chainsaw Man with the frothing enthusiasm of an overly birthday-caked child. And now, 2 years later, Chainsaw Man's anime has become one of the most anticipated releases of the year. Coincidence? Yeah, yes, that is a coincidence. To think otherwise would be delusionally narcissistic, even by my standards. So in order to find out where we are, we gotta look back at where we were. 2020 was without doubt the most bizarre year in the history of manga, and especially Jump. It was a year where we finally saw the immortal God King of Shonen, One Piece, wrenched from its throne and thoroughly outsold by another series, Demon Slayer, only in a twist of Shakespearean tragedy for Demon Slayer to vanish from existence, leaving a power vacuum at Jump's peak. And it is the war for that empty throne that took place in 2021 that I want to talk about today. And so, in a video that is a little later than usual for reasons I can only summarize with this image, we begin our surgical dissection of Jump, and as ever, start with the most depressing part. That's right, it's our yearly pilgrimage to the Shonen Jump graveyard. It is the brutal reality of Jump that on any given year, around a third of its ongoing titles will be cut, and 2021 was no exception. Beautiful Idiot Simulator, Gravity Boys, Subnautical Furry manga Hardball Cop and Dolphin, and battle manga Build King all disappeared from Jump's pages. And while we can never really know why a series ends, looking at their volume sales can at least give us some insight. Take Gravity Boys. Its first volume sold just under 10,000 units in its first 4 weeks. 10,000 units is the rough benchmark a new series needs to hit if it wants a decent chance of survival, which this series just about did, but the problem is that exponential growth is expected from there, with the Gravity Boys' sales immediately stagnating before dropping to just 6.5 thousand units on its 7th volume, at which point it was pulled from Jump's pages. Dolphin suffered a similar fate after a switch to a more battle-focused story failed to pull it out of its sales tailspin, as did Build King, which to me is always going to be a great premise immaculately fumbled. However, one series end I did not see coming was Phantom Seer. This was a beautifully drawn supernatural battle manga that blew past the 10k benchmark, and from there, sales growing volume over volume, only for it to hit a sudden, baffling end, and I really can't figure out what happened here. On paper, this was the exact kind of series that Jump loves, well executed with some good art and great horror, and with strong sales backing it up. The problem was likely something more complicated and unknowable. Interpersonal drama, author health issues, maybe Jump's editor-in-chief just didn't believe in the series. We just don't know, but whatever it was, Phantom Seer's 30 short chapters are a reminder of how opaque and cutthroat the world of Jump can be. The most brutal cuts, however, are the series that do not even make it out of their first year. A fate suffered by sports title Nine Dragons Ball Parade, which wins my award for my favorite name of a new series, but also the lowest opening weekly sales I have ever seen. And while everything about this title feels like a perfectly functional team-building sports shonen, I think the issue may be that it's a little too inside baseball.
This is the second Oscar.
What I mean by this is that for someone like me who is so utterly unfamiliar with baseball that I am mildly convinced it does not exist, Balls Parade assumes a basic level of knowledge that left me lost in exchanges like, "That fastball ain't gonna work on me. His confidence is the key. He leans in anticipating an outside pitch, just like his first at bat. He's a lefty sidearmer. We've had all righties up till now, so Conchiro will be giving different signs." Okay. I'm aware that the Japanese children this magazine is aimed at are likely going to be more familiar with baseball than I am, but requiring that level of knowledge is going to eat into any potential audience in a way that other better sports titles just don't. And I think it's because of that Balls Parade crashed out of Jump's pages at just 20 chapters. Faring not much better was I Tell C, a story about a female detective whose past kidnapping has traumatized her into a state where she falls in love with her criminal targets before yandere stalking them into confessing their crimes. Well, there's a lot to unpack there, none of which I am going to. I actually do think there was something to this title. The first chapter was really cleverly constructed and the story had the odd really touching moments, but this was an uncomfortable read in 2022, and at just 5,000 sales and a brief 21 chapter run, I think the bigger issue was that this was just way too weird for Jump's audience, which is the exact opposite problem of Niru, Way of the Martial Artist. This manga has fantastic artwork. If you would like to know, was there anything else remotely interesting about it? Listen to my voice. Look at this editing. Does it sound like I found even one other compelling talking point here? Exactly. Actually, you know, I just watched that bit back, and I think that might be too mean. The artwork really is very good, it's just the rest of it is... yeah. I don't think I would have needed sales figures to know that any of these series weren't going to last, but where things get a little less predictable were with the two new battle titles that Jump introduced. both of which made a big impact with an impressive first chapter, both of which were dust by year's end. Candy Flurry grabs your attention with wild, surreal imagery. The image of Tokyo destroyed by a gigantic meteor rain of lollipops is just so insane and beautiful, and such an exciting introduction to this world, where people battle by manifesting giant items of confectionery. But unfortunately, once that initial impact wears off, you start to see Candy Flurry for what it really is, because the wild tone of its visuals never carries through to its characters or writing. You could replace the giant candy weapons with psychic powers, samurai swords, or Pokemon, and it wouldn't make any difference to the story. This would still be the same generic cookie-cutter shonen battler, because all Candy Flurry ends up being is a very standard story draped in a cool aesthetic. And at just 5k volumes sold in its first month, it opened weak and things did not get better from there. The biggest shock for me personally, however, was the fairy tale battle manga Hunter's Guild Red Hood. If you had just shown me the first chapter, my response would have been, oh wow, cool, this could totally end up being one of Jump's top 10 manga. A darkly original story inspired by the worlds of Brothers Grimm, depicted through some gosh darn beautiful artwork, each page layered with texture and care that makes it feel like some beautiful forgotten page from some ancient story tome. There was a lot to like here, which is why it was kind of painful to watch that potential bleed away, as Red Hood shows the difference between creating a single impactful chapter and maintaining an ongoing weekly series. I imagine that gorgeous detailed artwork must have been a nightmarish standard to keep up, and as the art quality begins to fall, other problems begin to raise their heads. The characters doing little to evolve past their initial shonen archetype as the story's pace grinds to a tedious crawl, squandering that first chapter's momentum in a way I don't think this series ever recovered from. Selling just 4,000 units on its first volume, Red Hood's fate was clear, and I think you can actually see the author struggle with that looming cancellation as its later chapters grow weirdly meta. Its characters exclaiming, "A story that doesn't entertain is abandoned. Once abandoned, our world will disappear." Ultimately, what I think Red Hood ends up being is a series where the crushing realities of what it is to maintain an ongoing weekly shonen are pulled sharply into focus. This is, as ever, the harsh reality of Jump. Failing titles disappear so that potentially much bigger titles can take their place. And 2021 was a year where Jump really needed those bigger hits, which arguably it did not find in 2020, with a group of titles that, despite their quality, were not the breakout successes that Jump needed, putting a lot of pressure on 2021's newest series. The first of which is the manga. The first of which is the manga. Okay. I don't want a bunch of fucking people in the comments telling me I'm pronouncing it wrong. Sometimes the author just picks a bad title, okay? Sometimes it's just a bad title. Why is there an X there? Why is there an X there if you don't say it? And you know, while we're on the subject, I say JoJo's as shorthand because it's not called JoJo Bizarre Adventure, you f***ing idiots! And you have the gall to come into my house and tell me I'm wrong? The manga follows the story of 7 siblings, nearly all of whom are genius pianists. Bar one, our main character, who is so mediocre at piano that his parents got divorced. Wow, that's really unfortunate. This is the new title from Jump that I would say I enjoyed the least but thought about the most. It has some of the worst page design I have ever seen from a published manga, with a page flow that actually drags your attention in 2 separate directions. Some of the layouts being so cluttered I found it difficult to decipher what is even happening, and shit like this is usually a death knell for me main manga, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't think there wasn't something here. This is a strange, music-based, non-battle battle manga built around our main character's ability to drag people into different memories and realities through his music. In a story about how our capacity to convey emotion through art is more important than technical proficiency, which for this title is appropriate. And honestly, while I would have initially predicted this series dead on arrival, its first volume sold a respectable 12,000 units, suggesting a potentially bright future for this unusual but compelling series. On the total opposite end of the spectrum is Doran. Fucking Jesus. Opposite, because this manga feels like it was test tube constructed in a sanitized laboratory by white-coated shonen scientists. The story of a boy fighting demons with a magical sword, no, not that one. Not that one either. Still not that one. Oh, come on, it's definitely not that one. There we go. That is kind of the problem here. Despite the fact that I think Doran is actually pretty well executed, it's hard to get excited about given how its entire story feels popped out of some generic shonen template. Its one unique selling point being its mascot character, Doran, whose body can morph into basically anything, leading to some honestly pretty fun battle scenarios and potentially huge merchandise, which cynically kinda makes me wonder, is that why this series exists? At the time of writing, I only had access to a single week of sales, which 4K isn't bad, but it's also the weakest selling of Jump's newest ongoing series, which could make it a likely candidate for the Shonen Jump guillotine. Another new title whose chances of survival I would give a shaky, hand-wavy sign of, I don't know, bro, is the comedy title Protect Me Sugamaru, a story of the wealthy heiress of a massive fortune and her eccentric 10-year-old bodyguard, whose enthusiasm to protect his client often lands her in more danger than the threats themselves. That is the joke. It is a reasonably good one. But the reason I'd have my doubts about the future of this series is that it's currently one of 5 other ongoing comedy manga, and while I like it an atom slice better than Roboco and Magu-chan, it is a far cry from the stupefying action comedy of Mashle or just the mind-destroying hilarity of High School Family Kazaku, all of which at this point are known quantities, so not super confident we're going to be talking about this one in a year. A title that seems a little more bound for glory is Witch Watch, a comedy about a teenage ogre who becomes the familiar/bodyguard to a high school witch. And I will say that aside from the one scene where Nico transforms herself into a piece of paper and gets stuck in the side of a building, which is just, I mean, it's just objectively great, I didn't actually get a whole lot out of this one. But then again, what do I know about comedy? I mean, did you see how happy I was about that baseball joke earlier? That was weird, because this manga is actually selling really well, likely because of its broad swath of action, comedy, and romance, letting it appeal to a much wider audience than most titles. That broad appeal translating into 31,000 units on its first volume, outpacing the initial sales of every new title from last year, meaning we could be looking at a new Shonen Jump mainstay. Whether that's also true of new legacy title Ayashimon is a little more nebulous. There was a lot of hype surrounding this one, as it's from the creator of Hell's Paradise, a breakout hit from 2018, which told the story of an unkillable ninja assassin who must journey to a forbidden island along with a group of other criminals and their samurai captors, and then battle royale their way to obtaining the elixir of life, all while attempting to survive the horrific creatures that inhabit the island. Hell's Paradise was one of those incredibly fun binge manga with a weirdly perfect first chapter that both got you invested in its characters while also dragging you further into its story with its ominous, tantalizing mysteries. And unfortunately, right now, I don't know that Ayashimon is hitting that same standard. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton to like here, and this is rooted firmly as my third favorite new series. It's shonen protagonist Maru growing up obsessed with shonen protagonist who learns to fight from manga in order to protect himself from his physically abusive father, until he became so strong that he no longer really fits in regular human society, only for him to be recruited by the heiress of a demon underworld Yakuza clan, seeking to regain her throne after her father's murder. The underworld of demon mob bosses feels alive and fascinating, with some really cool world building touches, like how demons' bodies explode into showers of money when they're defeated, money which the victor can then use to build their own Yakuza empire. And this is when I think Ayashimon is at its strongest, when it's leading into the culture and dynamics of warring Yakuza factions, which is why it's kind of a bummer that so much of the series is spent in straightforward one-on-one battles, in fights that are fun, but I'd argue nowhere near the standard of Jump's top 5 current series, all of which are battle manga. And compounding that problem is how this is currently one of 4 different bodyguard titles running in Jump, meaning that while Ayashimon is enjoyable, it currently feels like it's struggling to define itself among bigger, better titles. But at 18,000 units sold, it's not likely to be cut anytime soon, and to reach that next level, which is something I'm really rooting for it to do, I think it's going to need to focus on what it can do differently to those other titles, as opposed to what it does the same. Case in point, Elusive Samurai. Hojo is a young feudal lord whose family is murdered and their land seized as he is hunted down, forcing him to rely on his one strength, his ability to evade danger. There is so much to like about this series, but its real ace in the hole can actually be found in the author's previous title, Assassination Classroom, the Shonen Jump mega hit where a class full of children must learn a hyper-specific set of rules in order to kill their monstrous teacher, Koro-sensei. And what I fucking love about Elusive Samurai is how it fuses Assassination Classroom's hyper-specific scenario-driven combat onto a more ambitious story, with each feudal lord that Hojo targets being their own individual Koro-sensei with their own set of strengths and weaknesses, vulnerabilities that Hojo cannot exploit himself due to his own physical weakness, meaning he must build up a roster of retainers and utilize those allies in hyper-specific ways in order to take down his bigger, stronger opponents, in battles that explode with all the tension and excitement of a high-level game of Monster Hunter. And with these videos I generally aim to read at least one full volume of any new series I talk about, but Elusive Samurai dragged me into its chapters double digits. And I really don't seem to be alone in that. At 91,000 sales on its first volume, for context, that's more than the sales of every new series from last year combined, Elusive Samurai is a staggering success, a potential future member of Jump's 3 pillars, and about as close to a guaranteed hit as you can get. Which is what I would say if another new series had somehow not completely surpassed it. So, a long time ago, I was in Dublin's Natural History Museum. I was there drawing for a college class, and I look up and this girl is just standing there looking at me. I think sometimes people find my face a little intimidating. I think something about the way I look makes me seem more like serious or stern than I actually am, but this girl, she didn't seem intimidated at all. She just stared at me with these giant, curious eyes. And she starts speaking. And I don't even remember what we talked about, but what I do remember is over the course of this conversation, looking up at her and having this lightning bolt feeling in my chest of just like, oh no, I think I really like this person. Moments like that are what Blue Box is built on, and I use that story because there is a tenderness and sincerity to this manga that I just don't think you're going to get from a Wikipedia-esque plot summary. It uses a lot of the tropes and structure from sports manga, but rather than the focus being on these sports themselves, here, the sports are used to frame each individual character, becoming windows into them through which we and the other characters of the story can see who they really are, leading to these really sincere feeling moments of just, oh god, I think I love this person. The care and level of illustration through which these moments are rendered, making them hit with all the force of some runaway romantic dump truck, to the point that even if you do not care about romance manga, you really owe it to yourself to check this manga out. The one-shot prototype chapter is available for free on Shonen Jump's website, and it's worth experiencing not only because this manga just fucking rules, but because it will give you an insight into how Blue Box has become a once every couple of years mega hit. The first volume selling 65,000 units, which is already kind of incredible, but from there exploding further, surpassing even Elusive Samurai, now consistently selling 100,000 units, meaning this romance manga is currently a frontrunner to become one of Jump's 3 pillars. That is the last new series. It is now time for the most exciting part of our journey through Jump. That's right, it's Hunter by Hunter Watch! So before we begin our top 10, I want to do a brief update on Sakamoto Days. This was my favorite new series from Jump last year, but also the one whose future I was most worried about. The story of a former assassin now working as a convenience store clerk, trying to live a normal family life while also not giving in to his murderous tendencies, was beautiful. It was funny, it was touching, it was action-packed, and thankfully it was also successful. After a mediocre start, its sales have grown volume to volume, now selling 75,000 units on its most recent, which for a series that is so outside the genre of little boy tries hard, this is the best possible scenario, and goddamn, I am so happy to see it doing well. There's also these titles which are still ongoing, and they're fine. I don't really have any hot takes here, which I know isn't very exciting. So I should probably just start the next section instead of just kind of rambling on here, where now kind of I've gotten to the stage where like I'm just not saying anything. You know, these are just words coming out. This is a camera point, like, you know, when you point a camera at a television that's recording itself and it's just this infinite hallway of nothingness. That's what you're experiencing right now, and I imagine a lot of people have clicked off the video because this is just really boring. Should probably try and up the energy here. So we now enter the arena of destiny, the ultimate battleground for Jump's top 10 biggest series, with these caveats. At number 10 is a new entry in action comedy Mashal, which is like if One Punch Man showed up in Hogwarts and beat the shit out of Voldemort. It's always awesome to see a series enter the top 10 for the first time, but with Mashal, this is especially well deserved, and I'm really excited to see how the series does from here. At number 9 is veteran series Black Clover, which has haunted the lower spaces of Jump's top 10 for as long as I've been doing these videos. Sales are reasonably consistent yet again, and while I've been skeptical about this title's future in the past, at this point I'm kinda just impressed that it's managed to stick around as long as it has. Jump's landscape is brutal and survival is never guaranteed, and so you gotta respect any series that's able to last this long. At number 8, this one I gotta say hit me a bit. I actually talked about Dr. Stone as a new title in my very first, very bad current state of Shonen Jump video, and now, 5 years later, it's the last of those new titles that survived. It's a series I really grew to love over the years. It didn't have the strongest start, but it won my respect in its willingness to reorientate itself around a new main character, and in doing so, commit to its strengths, becoming one of the most unique and wildly innovative new titles in Jump for decades, which is why I've always considered it a title that got less success than it deserved. Until this year. Nearly quadrupling its sales since last year, but unfortunately just a little too late, as Dr. Stone released its final chapter on March 6th of this year. And while it sucks that it's gone, it's awesome to see so many people waking up to what a great series this was. As to me, Dr. Stone is always going to be a testament to how much territory there is still left to explore in shonen storytelling. At number 7, it's the first zombie on our list, and I say zombie because this series has actually been dead for more than a year, and yet somehow The Promised Neverland still sold 3.5 million units. But if the fact that it's still selling in the millions in its zombified state doesn't signal to you that it's a series worth checking out, then buddy, I don't know what will. At number 6, oh my god, it's another zombie. It's the shambling corpse of Haikyuu with 4.3 million sales. I really thought that last year would be the final times we talk about the beautiful boys doing things well volleyball manga, but those enthusiastic little idiots sure showed me Haikyuu enjoying a well-deserved after party. At number 5, it's another fucking zombie, but this time it is the most beautiful zombie imaginable. My absolute favorite modern manga, it's Chainsaw Man. I have talked a lot about Chainsaw Man in these videos, and I won't have anything more to say until I have more to say. The announcement of an anime with a phenomenal trailer spiking its sales further to an insane 5.5 million. And considering how weird and unpredictable this series initially seemed in Jump, I can't help feel we are living in Chainsaw Man's best possible timeline. At number 4, this one is fucking weird. It's One Piece. Yeah, somehow One Piece, the manga that defined Shonen Jump for a quarter of a century, has for the first time in the recorded history of manga sales failed to enter its top 3, dropping about 700,000 units in sales from last year. Now, there is definitely a big caveat here. One Piece is still selling the most if we measure sales per volume, meaning you are still looking at the technically most popular manga in the world. But that abyss-like gap that used to exist between One Piece and other titles is now gone, with certain volumes of the manga in our number 1 slot even outselling volumes of One Piece. And maybe even more shockingly, while One Piece is number 4 in Jump, it's number 6 overall, being outsold by both Attack on Titan and Tokyo Revengers. So, what is happening? Well, from the volume sales, the problem doesn't look like One Piece's current fans aren't enjoying it. The problem is that it's not really acquiring new fans, which we can tell by how little back issues it's selling in relation to other series. And I think the reason for that is that at this point, One Piece is like a video game whose meta has evolved and evolved and evolved, to the point that conveying what is happening right now or why it's cool requires a massive amount of supplemental information and knowledge of past story events. In other words, two of the things that have kept One Piece so strong for so long, its gigantic, dense world and its meticulous long-term storytelling, are now arguably perceived as detriments to new readers.
I tried reading some One Piece, and then I actually got overwhelmed by how long that series is. Like, I looked at, like, okay, I'll dive into this, and then as a completionist kind of person, I just could not.
According to the One Piece wiki, there are 1,364 named characters in the story at this point, which is a massive amount of new information for new readers to take on, as well as the fact that if you read One Piece for 30 minutes every single day, it would take you an entire year to catch up on its story. In that same time frame, you could read all of Demon Slayer, Dr. Stone, My Hero Academia, Jujutsu Kaisen, and Chainsaw Man. And so no matter how worthwhile One Piece might seem on the other ends, to new readers, that is a hell of an opportunity cost. I do think One Piece can expect an upturn in sales from next year with the release of the Shanks movie, but even with all these caveats taken into account, it's hard to look at One Piece outside of Jump's top 3 and not see it as anything other than the dominant era of this title being well and truly over. At number 3, for the first time in 3 years, it's My Hero Academia, outselling One Piece by just 20,000 units. While Hero Academia has never had the explosive growth of other titles, it's a manga that seems to keep its core fanbase consistently happy, and with 3 movies in 4 years as well as a seasonal high-quality anime, it also has a strong pull with a more casual audience, which is why I think you're seeing such consistent, steady growth. Horikoshi has stated that the manga is going to end soon, but he's gotten me with this before, and now I refuse to believe his lies. At number 2, it is yet another zombie manga. It's Demon Slayer at a batshit insane 29 million sales. Despite being dead for more than a year, the most meteoric rise of any manga ever continues. Demon Slayer, now a phenom of the industry, the impossible benchmark that all future titles will be measured against. The only thing more shocking than that being that it's not even number 1. At 31 million sales, Jujutsu Kaisen is for the first time the number 1 Shonen Jump series. An extremely strong second season of anime saw Jujutsu Kaisen's sales quintuple since last year, with a feature film that released at the tail end of that year, which absolutely fucking ruled, meaning that those sales are not likely to slow anytime soon, cementing Jujutsu Kaisen as the newest of Jump's 3 pillars, and right now, the biggest manga in the entire world. And hell, I think it deserves it. Jujutsu Kaisen for me is the middle ground of what I think will be popular versus what I think should be popular, embodying a lot of what's great about traditional battle manga, but defining itself through its dark, supernatural aesthetic, incredible supporting cast, and batshit insane action. How long it's going to be able to maintain its throne atop the world of manga remains to be seen, but right now, no ongoing series even comes close to Jujutsu Kaisen. So, if we take a top-down view of Jump, it's in a really strange situation. In some ways, it's in a lot more of a stable position than last year, with the maturing of newer series like Sakamoto Days and Mashle, combined with high-potential new series like Elusive Samurai and Blue Box, as well as Jujutsu Kaisen, now one of the magazine's 3 pillars. But right now, a full half of Jump's top 10 selling titles are zombies, most of which have been out for more than a year, meaning we can likely expect a sharp sales drop in each soon, leaving Jump in a situation where it still has a ways to go in bolstering a new catalogue of titles if it wants to stay dominant, especially in a landscape of manga that's changing rapidly and dramatically. The biggest shock we witnessed in last year's video was undoubtedly the total dominance of Demon Slayer, a perfect storm that led to an impossible outcome, but in the shadow of that storm, there was another upset, and one that could potentially have much greater long-term ramifications on the industry: the rise of Jump Plus, a free-to-read online magazine from the same publisher as Jump, which shockingly saw 2 of its newest titles, Spy X Family and Kaiju Number 8, dramatically outsell the newer series of Jump Regular. However, in 2021, we watched as Jump Regular hit back hard, with both Elusive Samurai and Blue Box, meaning that same upset couldn't happen again. Except it totally did. In yet another twist in the war for the future of the industry, Jump Plus has done the impossible again and introduced 2 new titles, both of which dramatically outsold the newer efforts of Jump Regular. I know that was very dramatic, but I like getting excited, and now we're going to talk about them. Most manga tend to specialize in one thing: action, comedy, horror, romance, but then you have Dan, telling the story of Momo, a high school girl who believes in ghosts, as well as Ken, a high school boy who believes in aliens, and unfortunately for them, they are both correct. Dan is fucking wild. It's filled with a kind of strange humor that makes its pages feel like some weird fan-translated meme edits, but punctuating that levity with moments of intense visual horror, as Momo and Ken encounter bizarre supernatural creatures in pounding action scenes that flow with a level of ingenuity and layout that I genuinely wouldn't expect from a manga like this. Like in this page, how the gesture of Ken's body guides your eye through each of the layout's focal points, making for action scenes that flow like liquid but then explode in these bombastic double-page spreads. And somehow, amidst all that, Dan actually pulls off a pretty compelling will they won't they romance, making it feel like some bizarre X-Files battle manga fever dream, which really should not work, but my god does it. And what's interesting is that I'd imagine Dan's wilder tone would make it a poor fit for Jump Regular, but in the more experimental online landscape of Jump Plus, Dan has thrived, going massively viral, collecting 106 million views, leading to Dan breaking 100,000 units on its first volume, with sales steadily climbing from there. And then, oh boy, it's Takopi's original sin. Takopi is a cute alien octopus from the Happy Planet who descends to Earth with a single mission: make someone smile. But unfortunately for Takopi, the someone he chooses is Shizuka, a little girl whose father has left, suffers abusive neglect at home and vicious bullying at school to the point that her dog is killed. Oh dear, and just when it seems like things can't get any bleaker, Takopi follows Shizuka home only to find her. You know what? I don't feel like getting demonetized today, so I'm not going to. Takopi's original sin is the kind of dark that makes you text your friend at 2 a.m. being like, dude, what the fuck? And that's what makes it such an impossible fit for Jump Regular, but also likely what made it go so massively viral online, with 76 million views across just a handful of chapters, and from there leading to a bewildering 198,000 units on its first volume. That is more than Elusive Samurai and Blue Box combined. But possibly the strangest thing about Takopi is that it's already over. Takopi's original sin ended after just 16 chapters, but that feels very much by design. Original Sin's original premise never could have maintained a longer running story, but with exposure like this, it doesn't need to. It's already outselling many of Jump's ongoing titles, but given its gigantic online audience, the potential for anime adaptation and merchandise is huge, meaning we could be looking at an entirely new business model for manga. Shorter, more experimental, shocking, and mature series designed to go viral on platforms like Jump Plus, which then make further profit through anime and merch. Their author now free to create newer titles that could potentially do the same. In other words, the exact opposite of how traditional long-running shonen work. And I think there's a lot of advantage to that. I think this could potentially be a healthier, more sustainable business model for the people who create manga, while simultaneously breathing new life into shonen with more varied experimental stories. Whether Original Sin is an anomaly or an actually sustainable new kind of manga remains to be seen, but still, it's a tantalizing glimpse into what could be a big part of shonen's future. With all this in mind, let's line up Jump's top 5 series and compare it to Jump Plus's top 4. We can see that Jump Traditional dominates in terms of combined volume sales, but there's a really important factor to take into account. All of Jump Plus's titles have been going for way less time than any of Jump Regular's, meaning they haven't had the same time to build up sales through a loyal following. But also, for the period we're measuring here, none of Jump Plus's titles have an anime adaptation, while nearly all of Jump's Traditional has. And with Chainsaw Man pulling a heel turn-esque faction switch jumping to Jump Plus in the coming months, it's hard for me to look at these two lineups side by side and not say that I don't think Jump Plus has the more exciting series, which means I do think that double negative. And what's more, if Spy X Family is currently airing anime adaptation gives the manga even a fraction of the growth we've seen from adaptations like Jujutsu Kaisen and Demon Slayer, there is a possibility that next year we could be seeing a free-to-read online series outsell One Piece. And man, if that doesn't signal to you what a weird and new era of manga we are now in, I genuinely don't know what will. And you know, it makes you think. I was talking to a friend of mine recently who told me of a conversation she'd had with a younger coworker about Demon Slayer, which her coworker had been watching on Netflix. And when my friend compared it to Bleach, her coworker said something that, oh god, just chilled me to my core and made me feel so old. He said, "What's Bleach?" And it made me realize that in the 7 years I've been making these videos, there's an entire era of anime and manga that has come and gone, and with it, a whole new generation of anime fans who don't know or potentially even care about what came before. People who didn't find out about anime through VHS ripped copies of Akira or Late Night Toonami, but through Netflix, through manga apps, through online fandoms. And if you've been watching anime for a while, I think it's really easy to be dismissive of those new fans, but I don't think we should. A, because gatekeeping fucking sucks, but B, I think what you're gonna start seeing more and more from here is the industry responding to that new type of online fan, and that shaping the manga landscape moving forward. And that's exactly what we're seeing with publications like Jump Plus. And sure, it's hard not to get nostalgic for the way things were. I think I spend a good 60% of this channel doing just that. But everything changes, you know? And I think that's what keeps this stuff exciting. I think that's why I keep making these videos. Friends, thank you for joining me today. I want to thank Jozu on Twitter for helping with the insane amount of research it takes to put these videos together. They have a really cool manga blog you should check out if you care about this kind of stuff that I will link below. If you like what I do here and would like to see me keep doing it, you can do so over at patreon.com/Super Eyepatch Wolf for just a $1. A special thank you this week to Alton Skinner, Callum Noble, Cassis Art, Gizmo of Shaolin, Julia Teano, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, Julia, Lunatic Prophet, and Leon Kennedy. As ever, you can find me hosting the Let's Fight a Boss video game podcast, the Jeff's Bizarre Adventure anime podcast at twitch.tv/Super Eyepatch Wolf, or on Twitter at Eyepatch Wolf. Friends, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you next time.